Every single day, I sit down at my desk to try to get my work done, and then somehow, at some point, out comes my phone. I find it damn near impossible to not look at my phone when I'm trying to get creative work done specifically, because in creative work, I often run into resistance and maybe I'd call it actually fear, which is that I'm afraid to do whatever the creative work is. And so my phone becomes the perfect tool for distraction. And in my experience, distraction is the death of creativity. So for a while, I tried to use paper notebooks so that I wouldn't be distracted by my phone. And honestly, paper works pretty well. But there are a few things that are modern features, I'll call it, that I just decided I couldn't live without. So here's my favorite solution. This Supernote Nomad, which is the small version, it probably has about like 1%, maybe 2% of the functionality of an iPad, and that is exactly why I love it. TikTok? Nope. YouTube? Nope. Instagram? Nope. An app store? Nope, not really. So then how does a Supernote actually work in my daily life? And well, one thing right here is that I take my notes for my scripts. Actually, this is how I do it. I'll usually type them up in Notion on my Mac, and then I export it as a PDF file and put it on here so that I can mark it up and do my editing process with a pen and paper. I also journal almost every day on this thing. I started journaling way more. Now, I can't really credit the Supernote with that. I still have to sit down and do it. This isn't doing it for me. But being able to easily organize my journal and have them look aesthetically pleasing and have them all, I can see day after day, I get a new journal entry. Those things are satisfying to me, and they add just enough, maybe it's just enough like dopamine reward that I want to do the journaling. And so while the Supernote doesn't do anything on its own, being consistent in my journal has made a life-changing effect. And so I'm really grateful for this little device. And that's how I can say this has genuinely changed my life. And it's one of those where it's like, could I have journaled on my iPad? Yeah, and I tried to, but it was just too easy for me to get distracted. It just handcuffs you enough so that you don't stop doing whatever you're trying to work on. I also journal typing, and I found that if I journal with handwriting, I have different emotional experiences than when I journal with typing, and I find that journaling is more valuable to me when I handwrite. Maybe it's that I write slower than I type, so I'm moving more slowly through my thoughts. Part of it also feels like the handwriting itself carries some emotion because there's the physical bringing out. Journaling feels different to me writing with a pen versus typing. I use it as my scratch paper for my coming up with creative ideas, which often involves brainstorming and just writing down whatever comes to mind. And I doodle on it, and I read my books on it, and handwrite in the margins. And that's one of my favorite things that you can do on a Supernote. I've found being able to write in the margins is so useful for me. It changes the way I read the book. And no, I'm gonna be honest with you, I don't actually go back and read what I've written in the margins very often at all. If you do want to, you can hit this button, and then you can go to annotations right here, and then you can see on each page what you've annotated, or you can go to highlights, and then it'll be just your highlights. But what I found is, even though I'm not going back and reading it, I understand and I retain the information so much better when I'm thinking about what could I turn into a note or what feels important to me right now. And then just having these little margins so that I can just write down in that moment, oh, Ram Dass says stuff like this. Oh, what else did I read? Sometimes we bow to rocks, especially 5/8s that beat us. All right, so I'm a rock climber, and 5/8 is a relatively easy route. And so it was saying these things can be your masters, or these things can be your gurus, so show them respect. And it's a humbling of self. And I have been humbled a lot by easy routes. And when I need a break from my desk, one of my favorite ways is to skate down to the park with my Supernote and get some sunshine in. I've been riding the Parsec Aero Pro, and it is by far the most well thought out and engineered electric skateboard I own. It's incredibly lightweight at just over 15 pounds, partially due to its carbon fiber deck and aerospace grade materials, which were both chosen for their maximum strength to weight ratios. Every part of this board has been meticulously crafted, and it shows. For example, it uses top-of-the-line Molicel P45B battery cells, which allows the board to be more powerful with fewer cells, keeping the weight down while still giving amazing acceleration. The trucks are more narrow and the bushings are taller and softer at a 90A rating than the average electric skateboard, which makes the board feel incredibly responsive and agile. Usually with that bushing and truck combo, an electric board could feel wobbly at higher speeds, but the double drop deck on the Aero Pro helps increase stability, which gives you a playful feel while you're carving, and it gives you stability when you're speeding down the line. But probably my favorite technical aspect of this board is the drivetrain, which is unlike any other board I've seen. Due to its idler pulley, which I've never seen on an electric skateboard before, there is just the right amount of belt tension all the time. Meaning if you want to stop and kick push, it's no problem with minimal motor resistance. And if you wanted to take off the belts, it's completely toolless and it only takes a few seconds. That also means if your belt breaks, you can replace it in a few seconds, which is so cool. I absolutely love mine and I've been riding it every day. If you want to check it out for yourself, I'll leave an affiliate link below. All right, back to it. But let's back up for a second. So that's what I do on it, but what actually is a Supernote? Well, basically it's an e-ink tablet, which means it's the same technology generally as something like a Kindle, which means there's no backlight. And as far as your eye is concerned, this is a piece of paper, meaning if you're in a dark room, you can't use it or you got to turn on a lamp. But if you're in direct sunlight, this is viewable, no problem, and so you can take it out to the park with you, which is really useful for me. And the ink display looks fantastic. I have no problem reading it. It's a high pixel density so that documents look crisp and clean. They have a low refresh rate, which means when you swipe something or try and do an action, it takes a second to actually display the change. But because of the e-ink display and what Supernote has done by choosing to not have a backlight, they're able to bring the screen a lot closer to the face of the device. So when you're writing with a pen, it feels like you're actually writing on paper. Oh, and this is another thing. They have their proprietary, I forget what they call it, but it's some screen technology where this isn't glass on the front. Every tablet that you've ever used probably has glass on it or some sort of plastic. And I would bet this is probably some sort of plastic, but it's got a little bit of squish to it. So when you write on it, it depresses a little bit and it feels like, you know, when you're writing, like if you're writing on a piece of paper and it's on a hard desk, you can feel the hard desk underneath the paper. But if you're writing on paper and it's like a stack of paper, like a notebook, you can feel it kind of like you can feel the pen pushing down into the stack of pages. This feels like you're writing on a stack of pages, and that is awesome. If there's one thing that the Supernote does well, it's the writing experience. It is truly phenomenal, and while it doesn't feel exactly like a pen on paper, it feels just as good, and in my opinion, it actually feels better than a pen on paper. But I know some people want the pencil on paper experience, which is a little bit more like rough and a little bit more texture. This isn't that. This is definitely like if I was going to liken it to a real life experience, I would say this feels like a ballpoint pen writing on a notebook. You can go lighter, you can go heavier, and it is super responsive. Like it feels like there's no distance. To me, it actually just feels like a real gel, like this is kind of the gel pen or maybe a ballpoint pen, and I really like that. And if you double tap with 2 fingers, you'll get up your toolbar. There are different pens. This is like a more of a, I think it's a felt pen, and then this highlighter I actually use a lot. So there, you know, it's got things you'd expect it to have, but it feels, the writing feel is fantastic. And I've used iPads in the past with paper-like screen protector, which adds a little bit of texture to the iPad. And while I like the texture on that, this feels soft, which is something you just can't get on an iPad. And so I really like the experience. I think the writing experience is fantastic, but it's not without its drawbacks. And one of those is if you're going to have a soft screen, it's kind of easy to damage. Now, I don't use mine with a case because I don't like cases. I don't like the extra thickness generally. And I have put a couple little Mars on the screen. They do have a folio case, so if you don't want to damage your screen, I would do that. That probably works really well. But what I was counting on and kind of planning on doing was Supernote, the company, stands behind their products, and they offer all of the parts you need to repair one of these on their website. So if you want to buy a new screen, it's like 40 bucks. And then yeah, you have to replace it yourself, but I don't mind DIY. And then you can put a new screen on. So I'd prefer doing that. But they also have, you can replace the back plate, which is a toolless entry back plate, which awesome. But you can also buy a new battery and a new entire logic board, which means when the new logic board comes out, or if yours breaks for whatever reason, you can just put a new logic board in. Or like for the battery, for example, we know batteries are consumable, and a lot of companies count on the fact that once the battery degrades to a certain point, you're just gonna buy a new device. But Supernote doesn't. They offer battery replacements, genuine first-party battery replacements from their website, which I think is a cool move, and I really respect them for doing that. Supernote, the company, feels a lot more like a framework or a valve where they're like, once you buy the hardware, it's yours to do with whatever you want. And one of the ways that that philosophy shows up is by offering you replacement parts, which, I mean, I think it just should be a given that anyone should be able to buy parts to replace their tech devices, or all of it, if something breaks, because these things break. But so many companies just don't have that, and that's not normal in the modern design. So I love supporting a company that does something like that, and Supernote does. Oh, and speaking of the battery life is good. I pretty much never think about it. I'd say I probably charge it maybe like once a week, and I'm using it a couple hours a day. But I have read on Reddit that if you turn off Wi-Fi, you'll get dramatically better battery life. But I like leaving my Wi-Fi on because I like it to automatically sync the documents so that it's backed up all the time. So that's just not an option for me. But the other thing that really affects battery life is turning on handwriting recognition so that you could do keyword searches. I leave that off because I heard it tanks your battery life, and I don't find the need to search for things. But if you wanted to search for your handwriting, like type in find this word, it can do that, but you just have to have handwriting recognition turned on, and that uses a lot of processing power. So anyway, all this to say, I get about a week with maybe a couple hours of use a day or a few hours of use a day. I pretty much only charge it when you'll get a little warning that's like the battery life is low, and then I plug it in. And because the warning is at 20%, if I get a warning and I'm out for the day, 20% will last me the rest of the day. So that's why I don't worry about it. It's never been an issue for me, and I've never had it die where I couldn't charge it or charge it within the next 24 hours. So I would say the battery life is good, not great. Something like my Kindle gets better battery life, but I can't write on my Kindle, and this you can write on, and that makes a really big difference. Probably my most used shortcut though is if I swipe up from the sidebar, it'll undo whatever you did. So if you're saying what, and then, oh, I just do that, then you can just swipe up a couple times and get back to wherever you were trying to do. And then the opposite, if you swipe down, it redoes. So you can see those are just going back. So that's pretty useful, and I use that regularly. The other gesture that is probably my most used gesture is if you do 2 fingers on the screen, then it'll go into lasso mode, and then you can lasso like that. And now you can move this. I didn't want that there. Let's say I wanted it over there, or you can delete it, which I do all the time. And that is probably my most used feature, is the lasso, which is that you're like, oh, I needed more room in the middle here. And this is, I'm glad this happened, because this is something I wanted to bring up, is that even when I'm slow and deliberate, if I put 2 fingers on a screen, often there it works. I would say like maybe a third of the time or something, you'll go to do the thing, and then it doesn't work, but then I do it again, and then it doesn't work again. So you can see it's not that reliable. And while it's not that big of a deal for me, because when it doesn't do the gesture that I think it's going to do, you can just swipe up and do undo and get your stuff back. So it's not that big of a deal, but it is definitely something that actually annoys me, because you have to go very slow, very deliberately, and then sometimes it doesn't work. And when you have that, is it going to work? Is it not going to work? You end up taking another second to like wait to see if it worked or not. As far as the software goes, this is another area where this company is just flexing that they are consumer first, where it's open source Linux software, which awesome. They do not lock anything down. If you really want to, you could sideload apps. If you want to sideload something like CoReader or F-Droid, you can. It just works. I don't do that because I don't find the desire to, but you can tell the company is committed to, once you buy the hardware, it's your hardware to do with whatever you want. And I think that's really cool. And actually this business, consumer first business ethos is what ended up making me choose the Supernote over the Remarkable, which was the other one that I was looking at. And I'm not trying to start a turf war in the comments. These are just tablets, people. This is not a religion, but I still want to talk about it. So the main reason that I bought a Supernote over a Remarkable, it was the subscription service. On the Remarkable, if you want cloud saves, you have to pay for a subscription to Remarkable's cloud service. And I don't like paying for subscriptions. It's not that much. I think it's like $3 a month or $30 or $40 a year. It's somewhere in there. But I'm already paying for several other cloud services, so I don't want to add just another subscription that I'm paying for. And with the Supernote, you can use Supernote's cloud service, which is free. Here's where if you had a different, I use Supernote's cloud because I find it convenient and it works well, but you could use Dropbox, Google Drive, or OneDrive, so all the big ones. And I really value that. Again, it's less to do with the subscription itself, although yeah, I don't want to pay money, so it's like, it's not to do with that, but it's more to do with the fact that the company is just saying, hey, you can use this device how you want to use this device. Whereas Remarkable is saying, we have the best way for you to use this device, which I'm sure their cloud service is good. I'm sure it integrates well and I'm sure it does things well, but I want to use the device the way that works best for me, not the way that works best for you. And the other big reason that I ended up choosing the Supernote over a Remarkable is the size. Remarkable doesn't have this smaller like Kindle size. Here's my iPad 11-inch, and as you can see, this is the size difference. Obviously, my iPad has a case, so that adds a little bit of bulk. But this is the size difference. And the Nomad is, well, that's how big it is. They're about the same thickness, which is to say, like, not thick enough for it to matter to me. But this is so much smaller and more portable. And actually, let me go and grab my Kindle, too. This is my Kindle Paperwhite. It's a few years old at this point. I think I got it in 2020, maybe. But you can see if I line that up, it's a little bit smaller than the Nomad, but not a ton smaller. And actually what I like to do, because I don't like to keep a case on either of those, is when I put these in my bag, I just put them face to face. And then this is how I carry it as, so then I get like my Kindle books and my Supernote both in one. And you're like, why would you carry a Supernote and a Kindle? Well, there are kind of two reasons. One is that sometimes, depending on what the book is, I want to have a full screen for my notes. So if it's a book that I'm taking a lot of notes on, then I want a full screen for my notes. And so I don't want to use this screen as a reader. I want to use it just as a note taker. So then I'll use them both like this. This is the reader, this is the note taker. But then two, and this is kind of a bummer in my opinion, but it's that the Kindle has a backlight so that if I'm reading in the dark, which I often do, I can read on this without turning on a lamp, which is really convenient for me. I do wish this had a backlight, and I really like it because I can fit this in my pocket, or it easily slips into a fanny pack, whereas a full-size sheet of paper, which is more similar to like an iPad 11-inch, it's just harder to carry around. Just a personal preference, nothing wrong with either of them. And another thing that I really like as far as transparency with the company is that they have a software roadmap that they show to everyone. And so what you can do is they have their roadmap of new features that they're trying to add, and you can go and comment on it. If people want to say, hey, this is the feature we want the most, they listen and they'll prioritize adding that feature first. So like when I first got it, I remember a feature that I voted on was being able to draw ruler straight lines, where if you drew a line and then held it for a second, it would go ruler straight. And they listened, and so they added that as a feature. And so being able to have a say in what the developers actually spend their developing time on, not what would make them the most money or what might be best for their company, but what their customers want, that's so cool. And I've actually never seen a company that has an open, like, votable where you can comment, I want this feature, and then you upvote which features they'll have. They also have their list that they're working on, and you can upvote. And then the one that has the most upvotes, they prioritize. I don't know if they prioritize it above all else, but they prioritize it because they'll show it on there. And I just think that adds so much to me feeling like a valued customer, not just someone who bought their product and now that they've made the sale, they just don't care about my opinion, which is how I feel with a lot of companies. The company stance on their hardware with giving you the right to repair all of it. Their stance on software where it's open source and they show you everything that's going on and you could side load apps if you want. Those make me feel like this is a good company and I want to support them. Just for some juxtaposition, I also buy stuff from Amazon sometimes, actually more than I would care to admit. And every time I buy from Amazon, I feel shame. I feel guilty. I'm like, ugh. But sometimes the convenience is worth it for me. But this, with the Supernote, I actually feel good about supporting their company because I agree with what their company is doing in the world and I like the direction that it's pushing the tech industry. Now, it's a tiny company, but even still, it feels like when I'm using this, I'm like, yeah, I'm supporting a small team of passionate people and they're doing the right thing, and that feels good to me. So yeah, if I was going to sum it up, I'd say if you want the most features and you don't really get distracted, just get an iPad. It's going to give you a lot more capability and you can do a ton more stuff. But if you find yourself getting distracted with your phone or your iPad and you just want what I'll call like a modern piece of paper, which gives you the ability to sync, gives you the ability to move stuff around on the page, gives you the ability to write in the margins of your books, that sort of thing, then this has been a game changer for me and it's genuinely made a positive impact on my life. And that's not something that I can say about very many pieces of tech. So I cannot recommend this thing enough. I probably should have said this at the beginning. This is not sponsored. I paid my own money for this. I have no relationship with the company. All right, if you have any questions about the Supernote, let me know in the comment section below and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.